Hey, everybody. The other morning, I did an AMA with a startup called Algolia that's coming up on 100 million in revenue, a search and service company that I was an early investor in. We had a couple hundred folks from the company come, but we ran out of time for the Q&A. I thought for fun, I would just answer some of them here for everybody if they're helpful. And the theme of the meeting was, what are the things that I learned as a CEO during the last downturn that might be helpful for today? And just got a bunch of questions from folks and thought I'd answer the 10 or so that we didn't get to. The first one is, what kind of mistakes have you seen companies make during, did you see companies make during the 2008 downturn that you would warn them against during the COVID crisis? There were a lot of mistakes looking back on it. And I think 2008 is so different from today in so many ways. The financial system was bordering on collapse back then. Today, we've injected trillions of dollars in our financial system. Back then, the stock market was in deep trouble. Today, stock markets for SaaS, for cloud, are at all-time highs. And yet, by the same token, unemployment may even be 40% today in many ways, if you dig in. And this is a recession like we've never seen. So in some ways, this pandemic downturn is so different from this financial one last time. But I did see a bunch of mistakes looking back on it. And I'll summarize a few. Maybe the biggest one, just to be really simple, is no excuses. No excuses. And I worry a lot when I hear VCs give a certain type of advice to startups. And they say, it's okay to just, you'll get a pass for Q2 and Q3 of this year. No one's going to look back and worry about whether you grew. Just take care of business. And that at a very tactical level is true. This is such a crazy time that if you did great last year and you do great next year, and this year is flat or down, you're going to get a pass. If folks in tough industries, like amazing companies like TripActions or Eventbrite, have really terrible years and next year are great, no one's going to care. Everyone's going to write it off and forget about it. But don't use it as an excuse. Don't use it as an excuse to not fix things that aren't working. Don't use it as an excuse to not make your product better. Look back and look at the things that were already decelerating before things got challenging. And don't use this as a reason to hide from changes that you have to make. That's the biggest mistake I see today. And related to it, the biggest mistake that we all made back in the last downturn, and it's hard, was underinvesting. Stopping marketing, not investing enough in sales, canceling everything, cancel. And you have to have enough runway to get out of this. If you need 2 years, 3 years, you need to make it. But as trite as it is, you cannot cut your way to growth. And everyone that sort of settled last time, settled in the last downturn, settled for mediocrity because things were tough, felt sorry for themselves. They had a much harder time coming out of it. And the folks that had seen it before, the folks in the last downturn that had seen the prior one before, and I'd sort of seen it, but not as a founder, they sprung into action. And wherever possible, even if they had to cut some headcount, cut some expenses, they still invested in the future. So as soon as the markets came back, they were ready to take advantage of it. So it's tough. But as trite as it is, you have to find a way to do more with less. You have to build pipeline. And most importantly, whatever you do, gain market share today. Even if your growth is mediocre, even if your growth is declining, whatever it is, in your space, there is a competitive dynamic. You can build better software than them. You can find a new free edition, a new global edition. You can market better. You can promote yourself better. If you have 10% market share today, even in a market that's small and that's declining, get it to 15, get it to 20, because that's what's going to make you a winner down the road. So grow your market share, if nothing else, today. Next one. If you were starting your career over today, what would you focus on, and what would you do that would be the most impactful? Goodness, I wish the advice was simple. But I think when I think back on this, I'll give you the one bit of advice, which I got mostly right. And I know a lot of you get mostly right, but we also get mostly wrong. Working for a crummy company, unfortunately, is a waste of your time. Working for a startup that will go nowhere is still a learning experience. It's still worth it, but it's better. You only get so many at bats. It's better to work at a startup that's more successful. It's better to work at a startup that becomes very successful, et cetera, et cetera. And so we all index on brands. We all want to work at the hotter company, the better funded company, the company we just wrote about in TechCrunch. And that does matter because you want to be part of a successful journey. But equally as important as your boss is your boss, and someone that believes in you, someone that will empower you, and someone that has your back. So at the margin, it's a 2x2. Try to find the best boss in the best startup. But if you have to trade off a bit in the startup to get the best boss, that's the right way to build your career. So we know this, but don't overly fall in love with the logo when you're planning your career. The next one is, in the past 20 years, tech has had up and downs, 2000, 2008, mortgage crisis, now today. We bounce back. What will be different this time? Should we be optimistic, or is something different now? Well, goodness, I think I've been thinking about this a lot, as we have all been, and I don't have a crystal ball. I'll tell you two things that I'm thinking, or maybe one thing, but a timeline. I think that generally this is a big deal what's happening now. It's very different than the last time. The stock market remains strong, but the economy is in much worse shape than last time. So it's very different. But at the end of the day, when I read an early SaaStr blog post the other day from 2012, I wrote this post in 2012, you can find it. Palo Alto's finally back. So even in downtown Palo Alto, where the privileged live, which is the center of the old Facebook and where Google was founded, and where so many rich founders live, and so many folks that are privileged and live glamorous lives, even with all their pocketbooks and all their wealth and all their cash, the last retail establishment right on University in Palo Alto did not get unboarded up until 2012. That was 4 years. It doesn't mean by 2012, SaaS was already accelerating. We were starting to see hints of what it's like today. Unemployment in tech had plummeted to new lows, but retail and SMBs and mainline America, even in downtown Palo Alto, took 4 years to recover. So I'm sort of thinking as follows. In about 6 months, we will see a new normal. We'll all get used to the way the world is today. Not just us as vendors and as founders and as SaaS companies, but also buyers. Buyers right now are cut, drop everything, make shelter at home work, get Slack up, get Zoom up, get call center up, drop everything that doesn't matter, negotiate over nickels and dimes. So we're going to get past that. And it's not going to be worth CIO's time to be arguing over a 5% refund on a piece of SaaS product they like. We're going to run out of gas on cut. And we're going to get back to normal, and we're going to buy in normal ways. We maybe buy differently. We may have less of an innovation budget and more of a digital transformation budget, but we'll get back to some sort of normal in 6 months for SaaS, whatever that is. But I think it will be 18 months until the world is normal, until we have the same experiences in life, until Dreamforce is the same, until Coachella is the same, until even SaaStr is the same. I think that's going to take 18 months. And I think that's going to take 24 months, even when our lives are normal as tech people, as SaaS people, and even when our customers' lives have mostly returned to normal, not all of them. The biggest business, and folks that sell to SMBs will see this the most, and folks that sell to the Googles and Microsofts will be the least impacted, but it's going to take over 24 months to get back even close to the 4% unemployment we had, to the crazy rent rates, to 4 applicants for almost every job. If we even get back to that in 2 years, we'll be lucky. So the more you sell to average SMBs, average Americans, average folks worldwide, it will be years until we get back to where we are before. But the fact that cloud is still growing, that's not stopping. In fact, that's accelerating now. That's a boost we're all going to get. And in many cases, even some folks are benefiting from that already, they're up. But even folks of us that are just sort of modestly impacted, that maybe we're going from 100% growth to 50%, and that's not modest. I mean, that is a big deal. But I suspect we'll all be back in about 6 months as buying returns to normal, at least in technology. Next one. What's the one thing back in the day that EchoSign, Adobe Sign, product engineering department didn't do to address the downturn that I wish they did? Same for sales and marketing. What did we do in product engineering? Well, I'll tell you the smartest thing that we did do in 2008. And while I tell you that, I will think through the what we didn't do. And I think I know the answer to that one too. So the smartest thing we did actually was add a more expensive edition. So in the bottom of the last economic crisis, we did not raise prices. In fact, I rarely raised prices after the beginning for a variety of reasons. I was probably too conservative there. But during the downturn, it was somewhat coincidentally, we added a global edition. In our global edition, all it really did was localize us into languages, especially 2-byte languages. But we were the only vendor that had that. And for a while, against DocuSign in particular, we just ran the tables. We won Google, we won Facebook, we won Twitter, we won all these deals because we were localized, and folks that were signing, especially in sales all across the world, would see the application in their local language, in Korean and Spanish and French. And we won these deals, and I charged 50% more for that. Not for our normal so-called enterprise edition. The pricing didn't change. And probably, I'm forgetting, probably we came under pricing pressure. Probably we gave bigger discounts for that ordinary enterprise edition back in the day. I don't remember renegotiating many contracts down, but the product wasn't that expensive. But we increased our per seat price 50% for the global edition, and customers could pick. Do I just want enterprise, which is great, which has 1,000 customers, or do I want this new global edition? And customers got it. Prospects got it. They're like, now I have a choice. This one will be $30 per user back in the day, and the enterprise one's $20. And I can just pick. No one's forcing me. No one's pressuring me. No one's raising my prices. But if I want this global edition, I have to pay more. And it worked like magic. We stealthily raised our prices by adding a more valuable edition, but not raising prices on anybody else and probably increasing discounts. So that was a hack that I didn't realize I was doing. I mean, I knew I was doing it, but I didn't know it was going to line up with the last downturn. But it was magical. So that's what we ended up doing well in product engineering. What did we not do? What we should have done in the downturn is not, and we kept growing. In some ways things didn't really change, but I wish we'd sort of taken advantage of it to solve more technical debt. Technical debt's a complicated issue, and anyone that tells you they don't have any, they must be the world's greatest engineering department of all times. But we did too much great stuff with too few engineers and too many hackers, and we had a lot of technical debt. And the downturn would have been a good time to say, hey guys, for 6 months, instead of features and features and features and features to features, we're really going to fix debt. And we spent a lot of time on infrastructure and refactoring and even sharding and all this sort of stuff, but we didn't really strategically address technical debt. And once you cross 10 million, 20 million, I mean, and you start to have a brand, the downsides of technical debt are so high, and you got to fix them if you can as you cross 10 to 20 million in revenue, or it almost becomes impossible. So that's what I wish we did more of during the downturn. Sales and marketing, the best and worst things I did were the same things. The best thing I did was we raised the bar. In fact, we raised the bar in every department. And what I said going into the last downturn, ironically, is I said there's no more limits on hiring. Not only did I not freeze hiring, but I actually ended all the caps. I said to all the leaders in product engineering, sales and marketing and support and customer success, I said, all of you can hire as many people as you want. And our customer success department tripled. Our sales department actually doubled. Engineering grew. But I only had one requirement, which was everyone we hire has to be better than everyone else we have here, or at least better than average. And people talk about doing that, about raising the bar for new hires, but typically as we grow, the truth is we let the bar down a little bit because we get desperate to make hires. So I did two things. I took pressure off hiring by creating this single criterion. Everyone has to agree that Linda in engineering is in our top quartile. And we all had to agree that a new sales rep, we all believed would be in the top 20%. Everyone had to agree in the interviewing process. But if they did, then I knew they would be accretive. I knew they would make money for me, given where we were. So I said, hire anyone you want. And literally everyone was able to hire anyone that met that bar, which is a high bar that they met. And I'm glad I did that in sales and engineering customer success. And then I didn't even actually have to worry about the budget because I knew these folks were so great. They would save more deals. They would get more upsells. They would drive up deals. They would close more leads. They would ship more better product. I knew that's how I figured out this accretive hire thing, and it was magic. Okay, maybe just a couple more so we keep this tight. What are strategies that companies are currently putting in place you believe will win in the long run, and why? I'm going to go back to my earlier point and then give you some examples. Market share, market share, market share. That's what matters. Retention builds empires in SaaS. It sounds trite. I've said that, then that's true. But retention can be confusing in a downturn because it may be hard to retain that upsell. Like upsells get paused. Like maybe let's just stick with as many seats as we have today. Like if you had 140% net retention before this downturn, you may be lucky to have 100 today, but your logo retention can remain high. That's one thing that's important, but so switch to logo retention from net revenue retention for now. That's a recommendation. But to win, grow market share. Maybe that's a free edition. Maybe it's making onboarding simpler. Maybe it's doing pilots, which you hate, but now figuring a way to support them. If it takes stress out of buying to do a pilot, do one today. But what can you do to grow market share? What is the competition scared to do? What are they worried to do? What customers do they not want? Do they shy away from? Is the price point too low? Is the integration too complicated? Gain market share. and gain market share, of course, with happy customers. Churn and burn deals don't help. But the more happy customers you add in this downturn, the more customers they'll beget, the more second order revenue. And that's how you're going to get to 100 million and beyond, is by increasing your brand ambassadors, increasing your happy customers. And the way you do that, the simple way, is measuring market share and win rates, which is a simple way to do it, and driving it up. That's how you're going to win. Did you ever have employees that struggled and turned it around to be a top performer? If so, how did you help them get there? I've had many employees, there's a lot of nuance in this question. I've had many folks that got better over time. So don't give up on good folks. I will tell you personally, I think that onboarding is so important and training is so important, because I feel like if by day 45 or so in a startup, an employee is not scaled, it becomes almost impossible. If the sales rep hasn't closed a deal or two, if a customer success person doesn't really understand the product, if even worse, a new VP is struggling, if the metrics are going down. I've never seen a new VP sort of fail 6 weeks in and recover, ever. I've never seen it happen. So with VPs, it's more complicated. With individual contributors, you have to train them, you have to onboard them, you have to do everything. So I haven't seen folks that can't basically get to mid-pack in the first 45 days ever succeed. I've certainly seen folks that run with it. I mean, we've all seen this again and again and again. We've seen folks that constantly surpass our expectations. I'll give you just two fun personal examples, and then I'll try to just answer one more question and wrap it up. I mean, our first SDR that ever closed anything was Sam Blond. He's now Chief Sales Officer at Brex. He was head of revenue. He was CRO at Zenefits. He headed revenue at Flexport for a while and at Rainforest QA, and has had an incredible run, but he started off as our SDR, and he was pretty good, but I didn't know what to make of him. And then he became the SMB rep, and I just gave him the SMB rep because no one wanted to do the small leads. And in 60 days, he was closing more than even the reps with the big leads. And then he became our first sales manager besides our VP of sales. And then he became everything. And I knew Sam was good, but, and you can see him a lot of SaaS, I didn't know he was that good. I just could see hints of strength. And so I'd love to, other better leaders than me will tell you turnaround stories. I think it's tough. I think if you don't invest in onboarding and they don't make progress in the meeting, it's tough in the startup. But I think you have to, at the same time, lean in on anyone where you see little hints of success, little hints of strength, and just go all in on them. And then a very recent example, just with Amelia Barra, who runs most of SaaStr with me. I mean, she came in originally a couple of years ago to head demand gen, and she did a great job. She was selling tickets and doing other things. And then someone did this analysis on how we would grow attendance at SaaStr Annual. And my jaw dropped when I saw this analysis. I hadn't seen someone in years do such a good job. And it turned out it was Amelia that had done it. I didn't actually realize because it was presented as a group effort. And all of a sudden, someone that I knew was good, I saw that there was a hint of amazing, of someone that could be truly outstanding. And so Amelia went from our head of demand gen to our head of marketing to our head of marketing and more, and now basically to head of marketing operations and everything, and having most of SaaStr report to her. So it's a personal example. It may sound quirky, but look for those hints. Look for those hints of overachievement, like Sam embracing SMBs when no one else wanted to at EchoSign, Adobe Sign, or Amelia doing an analysis no one else could do, and then lean in deeply and support those folks. Give them all their help and see how far they can run. Okay, last one. Do you know how next year's strategy will look for SaaStr events? How will this work out for events overall? I don't know when people will watch this, but Dreamforce finally, for this year, canceled. Salesforce canceled all their events for this year. There are a lot of folks who are still looking forward to rescheduled events in the fall. I believe that events will come back in the fall, but I do not believe events at scale will. I believe they were one of the last things that we wanted to give up, going to Warriors games, going to Disneyland. And Disneyland may be one of the first to come back, but I believe business events will be slow. I believe people will take it slow, at least in technology. Tech companies were the first to go to shelter at home, especially in the Bay Area, and they're going to be the slowest to put thousands and thousands of people together. So the ones I'm watching is Disneyland. It looks like Disneyland's going to try to reopen as early as possible. Coachella, I think, is interesting because I want to go again. It's very B2C. We'll see what happens. But with Dreamforce out this year, I think it will be very slow for B2B next year. But what I will think happen in events is everyone is underinvested in marketing today. Everyone has cut their budget, and hooray, you cut your budget. But they're going to go into Q3 and Q4 of this year with no pipeline and no leads, or at least not enough. And they're going to be desperate. And field marketing is so important. So to the extent in Q1 next year, bigger IRL real world events can happen, they're going to happen. I think in January, there will be smaller events in September and October, November, December. We will come back at whatever scale folks are allowed to and feel comfortable. But I think there'll be a lot of pressure in Q1 to get back to some sort of normalcy in events, if for no other reason to generate pipeline and to make up for marketing gaps. So that's what I think. But I think even in the first half of next year, I think events that have a large international component will be impacted. I think we will be slower to have international travel to events. I think this event SaaStr is usually 50% international, 50% US. I think we will have more folks from the US come to whatever events we do in the first half of next year. But I suspect it will be fewer from international for a whole bunch of reasons. And we'll keep you posted. Obviously, we're thinking about this all the time. We're looking at the reopening that's happening now, which is interesting and exciting. At the same time, we're looking at Dreamforce and even the Olympics. The Olympics for next year now looks dicey because these lead times are so long. So even for us personally, what we're moving is to a more agile approach to events. It took us 13 months to plan the SaaStr annual this year, which had to be rescheduled 5 days before. Our hearts are broken, but it took us 13 months. Our rescheduled events will be able to spool up in 90 to 100 days. And they won't be as glamorous and they won't be as slick. And we probably won't have art cars from Burning Man. But the core will be just as good. But we'll spool them up more quickly so we can be more agile, at least until 2022. All right, thanks for everyone. We'll answer more questions later.